All right, picking up here with video 3, we're on page 185 in your anatomy book. Okay, the spinal column. I talked about this when I went through the bones you needed to know, but I also said that we would cover it more fully in the chapter, and here we are. So collectively, we call this your spine, but there are 3 distinct sections. Cervical means neck. Thoracic is your mid-back. Lumbar is your low back. Then we have the sacrum, and the coccyx is your tailbone. As an infant, the sacrum was separate bones that ended up fusing together as the baby aged. You can go back and look at your baby picture earlier in the chapter if you wanted to, and you would see. So sometimes you will see the sacrum talked about as sacrum 1, sacrum 2. That could be as an infant, and those bones are still separate. But normally you just hear the word sacrum, sometimes left and right, but that's about it. You do have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, plus a sacrum and a coccyx equals 26 vertebral bones. Yes, you do need to know how many you have of each one, but I have a trick for remembering that. Think of your meals for the day. You eat breakfast at 7, lunch at 12, and dinner at 5. 7, 12, 5. If that trick works for you, fabulous. Okay. So, clearly these bones change in shape as you go down the spine. Your neck ones are much smaller. You have a lot more movement in your neck bones than you do in the rest of your back. The rest of the back really just kind of flexes and a little side to side, but you've got a lot more movement going on in your neck. It's a very important part of your spine there. This is what a vertebrae bone is actually shaped like. Okay, top view, side view. And then in between them, there is a shock absorber called a disc. Okay, so that helps for when you get bumped around and that these bones are not touching each other. Your first 2 bones are really oddly shaped. We call your cervical 1 called the atlas, and the cervical 2 is called the axis, and you can see that they kind of fit together beautifully there. Okay, so the atlas and the axis. I've worked a lot of my career for a chiropractor, so I'm very well versed on the spine. Okay. There's your bone numbers that I already went through. Okay. Vertebroplasty. Plasty is med term for repair, so this would be repair of a vertebrae. And they can actually, this is just incredible what they can do. They can actually inject a substance, I'll call it glue. It's not really glue, but it can actually help fix some of these small hairline fractures. Obviously, if you're in a big trauma, you probably have a much more serious problem. However, as we become elderly, even small falls and bumps can crack a vertebrae. And so there's just some different procedures that they can do here to help that. Okay. Spinal curvatures. Our spine has specific curves, and it has specific curves that show up at specific times of our life. So when we are, if I had my doctor doing this, he does this beautiful picture of the spinal curve. However, we have the head, and he always puts a nose on it like that so you can see which way the person's facing. But our spine is pretty straight when we're developing. And then at some point when we are born, it is very C-shaped. And that's that baby who just kind of curls a lot like this picture here, kind of curls, and the whole thing is a C. Okay? But then as we learn how to hold our head up, we get a different curve going on in our neck. As we learn to walk and we learn our balance, we get a different curve going on in our spine. And it becomes more like this. Okay. You can see that that person has a little bit not normal curvature going on. They're demonstrating the lordosis. But we have a curve in our neck, which is a shock absorber. So now we've got the neck, but then we've got the curve going back and then coming forward, and then our tailbone goes back like that. Okay, that's how we end up as our adults. But as we continue to age even older, we start reverting back to that C that we started with, and that's when you see them, the little old people start going back together. It's also why the fetal position is comforting to us, because it's reminiscent of being a baby. Okay. So, what are some of the conditions we can have here? Lordosis means that low back curve is not normal. Kyphosis is a mid-back curvature going wrong. Okay. And we see a lot in the chiropractor's office. We see a lot of people with a bad cervical curve. So instead of it going like it's supposed to, it's either straight or it's going the wrong direction. Do you know what causes it? Well, lots of things cause it. A big thing that causes it today, because we see this in teenagers now. We never used to see this in teenagers. 20 years ago, this wasn't a teenage condition. Today it is. What's the difference? Cell phones. We're constantly doing this, texting, or on our laptops, and it's ruining our cervical curves. Know what a bad cervical curve causes? Headaches. Serious headaches. See a chiropractor. They can reverse that. They can get that curve back to normal, and you're good to go. Okay, scoliosis is a side-to-side curvature. This is obviously a very extreme case. I have seen some people like that in my office. I get the x-ray results from my doctor, and when I see a scoliosis curve documented that is high, I actually go look at the x-rays. Why? Because I'm interested. I'll be like, can I see so-and-so's x-rays? And he'll show them to me. I'll be like, holy cow. There are different surgeries when you're that extreme, because that is life-threatening. That's a lot of hardware put into that girl or boy's, usually a girl, scoliosis, spine, but that's an extreme treatment, but it was an extreme case. I see a lot of not so extreme, and chiropractic is a great choice. Okay. The thorax is the chest. Okay, so when we're talking about the thorax, we're talking about your rib cage and everything above your abdomen. We're talking about the thoracic cavity. This is also tied to the thoracic spine that's behind us. Okay, so we have ribs. Here's that sternum, and I was talking about the manubrium and the xiphoid process being the top and the bottom of the sternum. And here's the ribs. And these are all cartilage. Okay, so the cartilage, again, gives it some give. Okay, so you've got some give in your ribs. You know that also because your ribs move. When you breathe in, your chest expands and fills with air, and then it goes back down when you breathe out. And so it's constantly moving, so that we need that give. We have true ribs, and we have false ribs, and we have floating ribs. Okay, true ribs come around and attach to the sternum. Okay, and they actually consider number 7 to be a true rib as well. Numbers 8, 9, and 10 are considered to be false ribs. These ones come around and actually connect to the cartilage for the one above it. So those ones do not directly connect to the sternum. They connect to the 7th rib. The floating ribs, you have 2 of them, number 11 and 12, don't connect at all. Those ones come around and just kind of float in midair. Those are the ones that boxers like to get you on. If you can punch, like you're in a boxing match, if they can punch just in the right place and they can break that bone on the boxer, they're going to be in a lot of pain. And it's a great advantage. They call it taking a kidney shot as well, but it can break that floating rib, and it can be an advantage in your boxing game. Okay. All right, that's where we're stopping this video. We'll start on here with the appendicular skeleton on the next one.